Hello there. I'm going to talk today about a teaching that comes from the Mahayana tradition called the Six Paramitars. And they are the behaviors, the ways of being of the Bodhisattva. And I think if we take our practice seriously, we can all consider ourselves to be novice Bodhisattvas. In other words, we're in training to become more compassionate. That comes out of wisdom. Wisdom and compassion, in a way, are the very same thing once they are in their fullness. So you might remember that at the time of the Buddha, sometimes people look back and think it wasn't a particular emphasis there, compassion. But actually, if you look at the Pali Canon, there's plenty of evidence there, not just that the Buddha was totally compassionate, but that he encouraged the monks to work for the good of living beings, to teach for the benefit of all beings. So compassion is clearly found there. But we more associate the period of the Mahayana, the emergence of the Mahayana, which I think was about 500 years. It started after the Buddha's death. And it emerged because some practitioners were concerned that the emphasis of Buddhism had been rather by the letter, the letter rather than the spirit of Buddhism. And when they looked back at the Buddha's life, they could see this extraordinary compassion and giving aspect. So, I'm going to relate parts of verses from a teaching called the 37 Verses on the Practice of a Bodhisattva. And some of those verses are distinctly about these paramitars. So there are 6 of them. And the first one is generosity. And generosity comes first in a lot of Buddhist lists, actually. If we can't do anything else, we can be generous. If our hearts are not full of love and tenderness and wanting to benefit all beings, the first aspect of moving away from being so self-occupied, so self-preoccupied, so selfish even, is to give. So, this first verse begins, if those who wish for enlightenment must give away even their own bodies, how much more should it be true of material objects? Therefore, without expectation of result or reward, to give with generosity. So, as we know, the Bodhisattva, there is no limits to what the Bodhisattva will give, even their own body. That's very hard for us to imagine, and I don't think we need to go there. We're a long way from laying down our life for other people. But there are still acts that move certainly closer to that. Maybe you can think of some examples, such as giving one of your kidneys to a relative or to somebody that needs one. Maybe it's not giving your life, but you certainly are taking a risk if you're giving up one of your kidneys, and leaving various bits of your body in your will to other people for medical science. It's not giving yourself up while you're alive, but nevertheless, it's an act of generosity. So, to give without expectation of result or reward. Just think how hard that is. When we give, we often do expect, at least acknowledgement. We expect people to perhaps be grateful. So to what extent do we really give without any expectations? And what stops us giving? So, for example, if we don't buy a big issue, if we don't give to somebody who's sitting in a doorway, homeless, what is it that stops us? And I think often it's a kind of logic in our mind, or a kind of weighing up of well, what are they going to spend the money on? You know, I'm not going to give them money if they're just going to go and buy a beer. But actually, we could just learn to give, to just give freely. And it releases something in us. It's not just beneficial to the other person. It's actually very beneficial to us as well. Because it loosens up our self-grasping, and it also loosens up our views and attitudes. If we see somebody in need, just ask ourselves, what is it that stops us? Obviously, if you haven't got anything to give, you can't give it. But you can always give other things, such as time, attention, and, well, one of the things that the Bodhisattva gives that's quite an interesting one is fearlessness. The Bodhisattva gives fearlessness. So how does the Bodhisattva do that? How does he or she give fearlessness? I think it's partly by example. It's partly by embracing what is good and being able to be clear and help other people see what will really be helpful. So sometimes we think, well, we know what's helpful. Why do we need anyone else to tell us? But, you know, if we look honestly at our lives, we find actually that we're very good at doing what's not very helpful to ourselves. And sometimes resenting somebody telling us that. But we know deep down, I do believe that we know deep down. So to give without expectation of result or reward, so we're not going to get anything back, we just give. And it's a very good practice for just loosening up fears around not having enough, around the future and security and all those kinds of things that actually prevent us from being free, prevent us from feeling free. So sometimes it's just good to experiment, you know, just give away something. Somebody likes something that you've got, give it away. Why not? You know, you're not going to be able to take it with you. Yes, so giving is the first of the Paramitars. And the second one is, in this particular translation, it says this: if lacking discipline, one cannot accomplish one's own good, it is laughable to think of accomplishing the good of others. Therefore, to observe discipline without samsaric motives. So that's interesting, isn't it? Without samsaric motives. So those would be like doing the right thing for approval, perhaps, or being frightened of being blamed or accused. So those would be samsaric motives. So we need to know whether we, do we apply, do we walk the walk, do we actually apply and live out what we're teaching? Doesn't mean we get it all right, certainly I don't, We get it wrong a lot of the time, but the difference is we know it and we acknowledge it and we keep trying. Faith keeps us moving in the direction. So discipline is not a popular word today, certainly, but certainly self-discipline is really important if we're going to have any sort of practice. I don't just mean Buddhist practice. If you want to learn to play the piano, if you're not self-disciplined about it, you'll find yourself just doing other things and never practicing. It's the same with anything that we're skilled at. So if we want to train our mind, that also demands skill and practice. So in order to do that, we need faith and we need confidence. That's why I often say that, if you take up meditation, don't think you'll get anywhere if you do it once a week. It might be a start, but you need a habit, a positive habit, and that is self-disciplined. If you can apply yourself every day and you do it for 6 or 9 months And you just decide you're going to do it, whatever you experience. You're just going to trust that for the meantime. Then it's an experiment. You can see, does it work or doesn't it work? But without that self-discipline, you're never going to know. So, if you do it for a long time and actually you don't get any benefit, well, give it up and do something else. But at least try it. Give it a chance. Try out. The Buddha said, try for yourself. See for yourself. Don't take my word for it. And that's very good advice because it's got to come from ourselves. So that's the first two of the Paramitars, and I'll talk about the next two the next time. Bye for now.